Well, hey, you're watching What Was That About? My name is Moses Khan. I'm the host of this video podcast. We are a church located in Brampton, Canada, called All People's Church. I'm joined with our lead pastor, Dr. Tony Saldano. Pastor, it's good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Listen,
I just want to make a comment.
Yes.
Sometimes on this program, I feel like I can't even breathe. I just want to I'm not allowed to breathe on this program.
Oh, man.
That's an inside audio joke.
That's
anyway.
right. Yeah, that was basically our production person complaining about pastor's breathing. And so what are you going to do? We're not perfect.
What are you going to do?
Well, listen, we want to talk about men.
Okay.
Tonight.
Since we're men.
A couple Sundays ago, you were preaching. I think it was a sermon. I know it was a sermon on humility, the power of humility, and in there, can I call it a tangent?
Sure.
Is that appropriate?
Yeah, probably. I probably went off somewhere.
Regarding men and how men have become soft, specifically in society and even amongst Christianity, and you had made a comment on the need for strong men, and maybe it's not even fair to call it a tangent because you really did encourage men to tell them that they can be strong, that they matter, and that they need to be influential in their circles and in their lives. Mm-hmm. But I want you to expand a little bit on kind of your thoughts behind that comment, what led you to make that comment, and how as pastors and as Christians can we help resolve this issue of weak men in the society that we live in.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think when we look to the Word of God, mm-hmm. God who always identifies himself as a man, mm-hmm. as a male,
right.
over 2,000 times. I don't think that's an accident in the Bible. Always calls men to be leaders. If nothing else, leaders of themselves.
Right.
Leaders of their families and the home. And he calls men to be strong. Strong in spirit, strong in mind, strong in emotion, physically strong,
yeah.
right? And that's not to suggest that they should be tyrants or, overlords or anything like that. That's the power of humility and meekness, which is what? Meekness is power under control,
right? Yeah,
right?
That's good.
So it's not that you're to exhort your power over your spouse or your children, etc. That's not the spirit that we are talking about.
Yeah.
But there is a clear agenda to redefine who men are and what they should be, and honestly, what God has designed them to be. And we have a society that would rather have weak men, strong women, right? Look at Hollywood. Look at all the movies that are coming out. Even where the male is the leader in the movie, like he's the leading actor, there'll always be a female that is just as capable, just as strong, and constantly showing how women can also beat up men. They can be the powerful hero, etc. So it's this redefinition that is happening. Unfortunately, it is having catastrophic implications in everyday life because I really believe men are confused. Men aren't sure what they're supposed to be, who they're supposed to be, and look at all the mental illness. We've talked about that in some of our podcasts in children, but also in men.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this idea that, hey, it's okay to be weak and it's okay to be soft. Well, let me just go on the record. I believe that as men we can have weak moments and we have moments when we are softer. But let's be very clear, we're not designed to be that.
Right.
That's not what God has designed men to be. So this redefinition is diabolical.
Yeah.
It's not God.
Yeah.
And anyone that buys into it, and Pastor Moses, you and I see it every day. And you know what's interesting? Let me make this comment. So we want men to be weak, and then when they're weak and they don't lead, then women, particularly in marriages, get frustrated.
Yeah.
They get overburdened.
Right.
They get angry. It's like, well, isn't this what you wanted? Why are you upset now when the order and the design doesn't work? Because men are taking a back seat and saying, okay, you lead. You make decisions. You be the strength.
Right.
And spouses are becoming incredibly stressed out.
Yeah. I like that you brought up the idea of this is God's design. That what we're pitching here is not just, an idea or, our preference simply because of what we've seen in terms of the feminine movement in society and Hollywood and other cases. But what we're saying is, no. God has a design. God has an order. And society actually flourishes when we follow God's order, right? And so that's incredibly important. And you brought up the mental health thing. I think I read something just recently about men actually make up most of the suicides in society over women, which is a tragedy if we think about, not that it should be reversed, but just the fact that that's true is that more suicides happen, to men than anyone else, which is I think a result of this pressure even in society. Let me ask you a question. Do you think there's this sense of maybe fear and pressure because of the feminine push in society that men have just kind of taken a step back and just said, okay, I don't know if it's safe for me to be a strong man?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think, here again, I'm not suggesting that everything that was done previously was right, even in the church.
Right, yeah.
We have had, before all the haters come out, do people take advantage of the situation, scriptures like, so wives submit to your husbands. Yeah, because they don't understand the other side of that coin. They don't understand that Christ gave himself for the church, that it's an act of dual submission, that if you're really in charge and you're a leader in the kingdom, you're supposed to be the servant of all.
Yeah.
In other words, you don't go to the top, you go to the bottom. That's what Jesus said. Here's how you become great.
Yeah.
You serve everybody. You position yourself not at, hey, everybody kiss my ring because I'm at the top.
Yeah.
No, it's you position yourself at the bottom. That's what Christ did. He said, I've not come to be served, but to serve.
Yeah.
So let's understand this duality of what the Lord is talking about. And I want to be careful with that word, but the idea that if I lead out of servant leadership, not out of I'm Lord.
That's good.
I'm Lord. And so, yes, Pastor Moses, you have this confusion. Even, people say, well, what about people that aren't Christians? Listen, God has designed men in his image. I don't care what faith you're at.
Yeah.
God, you didn't come from a monkey. You don't have relatives. I don't care what they're teaching. And this is part of the problem. See, when you teach people that you came from animals, you're going to be an animal.
That's right.
When you teach people, hey, you've come from God, this is his nature, he's your father, then hopefully you will have those standards within your life. So here again, we wipe God from the equation. Well, what are people left with? You've evolved.
Right.
You came from some gorilla.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling people. That's what you're telling men. And you're telling them that strength is wrong, that leadership is wrong, that being decisive is wrong and evil because some people got it wrong in the past.
Right.
But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If being a man is so wrong, why do all these women want to be men now?
Right. Yeah.
Why don't they become, why don't they become something else? Why do you believe you're a man? Like you're teaching it, but you see, even there it is being redefined. And yes, there is a design. God.
Yeah.
Now we know they hate God, they hate all aspects of God, and everything is about how do we cast off this idea and this image that we are made in God's image, right? I mean, honestly, Pastor Mo, people would rather believe they came from a gorilla. Think about that. Like that is so absurd that you would want to believe that you came from that than from this amazing, awesome God. But why? Why do they hate him? Because he has absolute truths. Because he has standards and restraints that the people today, particularly North America, they don't want. They don't want restraints. They don't want absolute truth. They don't want to be told, I can't do this and I can't do that. What do you mean I can't eat from that tree? That's exactly where I'm going. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And as we read even in one of the previous programs, it's like they're basically spitting in God's face. You know, it's interesting. When Jesus was being crucified, that some people were so angry that they said, "We will not have this man rule over us." And that's the spirit of the day. And you're really living, you know, I call it the era of Eve, right? It's all about feminism, which is a godless spirit, right? And I'm not saying that there aren't aspects to the movement, whether it's equal pay, et cetera. There's some things that I believe are absolutely right. But the spirit fundamentally is non-kingdom. It's non-Christ.
Yeah.
Look at the way they behave.
Right.
Look at the things that they espouse to, even redefining what a woman should be instead of Proverbs 31 or what the New Testament and the kingdom describes what men and women should be. And this is why you have the chaos and all the issues. Because to your point, we're not going to follow God's ways. We're not going to see his fruit and his results.
Yeah, it's so true. Just to kind of switch gears in the couple minutes we've got left, more specifically to men in the church. So obviously we see the gaps in society. We see what society is doing, the culture. And yet the Bible says that as Christians, we belong to a different culture, that there's a different kingdom.
Right.
And so specifically as it relates to Christian men who are followers of Jesus, what would be, your words to them who want to rise up, who want to be, the men that God has called them to be?
Well, and I want you to speak to this as well as, as a younger person. I really believe now the church is probably filled more with women than men.
Right.
Overall.
Yeah.
And I think we have catered to that. And so when we want to draw men, it's very difficult because we have a very feminized gospel, particularly in the area of worship.
Right.
The majority of our worship leaders are females, right? And so even some of the songs, weird songs that have come out,
right,
that if men are coming into the church, I don't think they believe there is a place for them because they see all this feminization. And I don't know, Pastor Mo, do we represent a Christ that is very feminized versus who he truly is and who the gospel teaches him to be? His inner circle were men. Men followed Jesus. Were there women amongst the crowds? Absolutely.
Right.
Were there women in the upper room that followed him, believed him? Yeah. But primarily his entire inner circle were men. There was no, there's no changing that. And the majority of the leaders in the New Testament, Peter, Paul, James, John, men, writers of the Gospels, all men.
Right.
And somewhere, whether it's to appease the movement that is happening in society, or because we say, there's more women in the church, let's feminize and let's soften the gospel, whether that's intentional or unintentional, I think it has actually driven men away. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I think the expression of our worship services cater more to women. They are more emotional. Certain worship songs tend to sound more, romantic, lovey-dovey. And so it is an emotional experience that I think we try to build, and maybe that is a result of the fact that majority of the people coming are women. But I think maybe there needs to be a shift. Maybe there needs to be a shift to allow men to express themselves and to not make, it's interesting. It's like emotional expression is not the only way to love God, you know? And so,
Well said.
And so we have to, I think, balance kind of the scales with that, so that we invite men into.
Which is interesting because most men are probably not going to be emotional, right? They're not going to experience God in an emotional way. So if that is the overwhelming expression,
Right.
then you're going to isolate them,
Yeah.
and you're going to cause them to retreat and
That's
say,
right.
well, the church is, it's a women's religion, it's a women's God, and that is simply, we're seriously, we are not representing Christ and
Yeah.
God in an accurate way.
Yeah.
And that's not to belittle the women or say anything negative about them.
That's right.
It's we are going from a biblical perspective, which clearly we have, in general, we have lost.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and I know we have to close, but just to shift gears a little bit, it's interesting that the movie Top Gun, I believe, if I'm accurate now, one of the highest grossing movies ever created,
Yeah.
was all about masculinity and male leadership, and it exploded. It exploded in the movie scene, which says to me there is an appetite for that. There's something missing, not only in the church but in society in general.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Good point. Good point. Well, listen, thank you for joining us for today's episode and conversation. Comment below what your thoughts are on this idea of men in society and the church. Has Christianity catered itself too much toward women? What do you think about that? Listen, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share this video, like it. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Pastor Tony, thank you so much for your wisdom and this conversation. God bless you.